Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Mind Blown Zone. This one is called The Legal Overlay Explained. How are you feeling, Brad?
Never better. Yourself?
Also very good. Thank you very much. So for our viewers, we've actually explained the history of the legal overlay in a few previous podcasts. If you feel like going back and listen to those ones, feel free. We explained that over the millennia, there has been this whole series of events that have led to this real system being imposed or overlaid atop what you might call the common law, and it's just a system of statutory policies and statutory laws, corporate policies, all these things that are kind of like artificial control system. You might like to put it like that. But Brad is going to explain exactly what it has become for us now. He's going to do most of the explaining, and I'm just going to assist things, facilitate things, help things move along, and make sure that everything's clear for everybody listening. So, want to let you know this one's going to be absolutely awesome. Okay, the content in this is going to be like, whoa, this is going to be a serious mind blow to understand, what's going on in the world with this legal overlay. All right, Brad, I'm looking forward to it. Take it away, please.
All right. And that's the purpose, to blow a few minds. Hopefully, many of our listeners, viewers will catch hold of this. It isn't complicated, but it's kind of an inversion and a reversal of what we've all been indoctrinated into believing. So hopefully we'll have some fun with this. So I wanted to start right off the gate and just say that this is an educational and awareness expansion podcast. This is not a solution-based explanation. There are just so many required elements and knowledge that you actually have to have before you could even begin to put this into action. You got to have personal interest in this. You've got to do your own research and educate yourself. There's something about repetition and hearing it over and over again that lets it sink in. You need to get it, deep in your understanding. And most importantly, as you'll see as we go along here, you have to come to embody what you've learned. So, as one of my favorite guys says, it's a lifestyle. And once you understand who you are, then the game changes. And I'll get into that a little bit later in the podcast. But I also wanted to add a few disclaimers. First and foremost, we're not advocating anybody tries to get around the law or act unlawfully. That's not the purpose of this. If you do act unlawfully, then you do have to compensate somebody for your behavior. There's just no two ways about it. I also want to say that this podcast is not legal advice in the least. It's an explanation of what's happening, so you'll get a sense of how this legal overlay works. Doesn't mean you're going to be an expert at it at the end of this podcast, not by any means. So we don't recommend trying to use any of this material in a courtroom. And if you're in the midst of a lawsuit, there's almost no chance that you can get yourself out of it with any of this information. So neither of these strategies are recommended, shouldn't be tried. This isn't about gaming the system. It's really about understanding what the system is, how it works, the legal system. So, what was my last point here? I wouldn't use any of these tactics myself without knowing a whole bunch more about how this works. I've listened to, heard about, and watched many, 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 many people make mistakes and fail at this, and they thought they knew what they were doing. So it's a lot trickier than you might think, but it starts with having some awareness and understanding of what's going on, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Right. Thanks for that preface, Brad. I think that's useful because I think it's useful as well to, like, it highlights an admission that, and this is an ongoing discovery. All right. We're not claiming to be like, here's the exact truth of what's going on and what to do, what you should do to achieve exactly what you want right now. And we're not making any claims like that. We do think that this is, right at the tip of the spear. But for everyone involved, this is still an ongoing investigation and understanding.
Perfect. Right. So right out of the gate, I want to start with what is law? And it's a word that has been severely watered down. It has multiple meanings, which is one of the biggest pieces of trickery in the legal system is these words with multiple meaning. So in reality, or the initial definition of law would be it's something that's immutable, something that can't be changed or altered. That's the basic, simple definition of law. And we think of that in terms of natural laws or universal laws, God's laws, however you want to think about it. Right. So, just to give a couple examples, if you want to travel between your country and another country, there's nothing in the universe stopping you from doing it other than man made rules, policies, artificial barriers, boundaries between so-called countries, right? So this is an example of there's no law preventing you from moving between countries, but there are governmental, corporate, state level statutes. Yes, makes sense so far?
Oh yeah, right. I mean, a law is kind of like how the universe works, just naturally.
Right. Those are laws. So another one is flying that I wrote down here. So human beings cannot fly unaided. Most birds, species of birds, can fly. Humans can't fly. That's a law. We cannot fly without, technology. It's a universal law. We're not built to fly. The next one I have here is the gravitational effect. Someday we'll do a podcast on the non-existence of this thing called gravity. But for now, we can all agree that what goes up must come down. It's a universal, natural law.
All right.
And
Things fall down.
Right. And the last one is just speaking. You can speak and say whatever. There's nothing in the universe that's preventing anybody from saying what they want to say. But of course, we have man-made rules, policies that get in the way. They try to call them laws, but they're not really, right? There's something else. So that brings me to common law. We hear that a ton in this, patriot community. And I explained this a little bit in the legal overlay history, but I want to make one point clear about this. The common law is what's common to you and those around you. So that isn't written down. It's based on the mores, the traditions, the culture that you live in. So basically, the common law is what a jury of your peers would be able to evaluate to determine whether or not you are a fit member of society for whatever behavior you were in a suit for. So I want to make this other point is that I've heard many people try to say this isn't a common law court. This is admiralty, maritime, yada, 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 to judges. And the judges, this is just a good example of how easy it is to get flipped around and your idea sabotaged is that most attorneys and judges today will say the common law is the legal system today. Does that make sense to you, Matt?
Right. Yeah, that's a trick, isn't it?
Right. They'll say this is common. This is what everybody's using. This is what all our courtrooms are using.
Statutory law is common.
Right. So there's a huge mistake when people go in and stand up in front of the judge and say, I refuse to, stand trial for this because it's not a common law court. And there's a good example of how quickly you're shot down.
Mm-hmm.
So need to be real careful all the way through this. Anyway, the last thing I just wanted to say was the only law we really need is the golden rule, right? The only law of moral, ethical, rational behavior. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the other 93 million statutes and ordinances and codes and acts, decrees out there are unneeded. Every rational, reasonable person understands when somebody has behaved, unethically, immorally, or caused some kind of harm, loss, or injury to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Totally agree.
So I start this off by saying, who and what are you, Matt? Who and what are you?
Can I read off the page that I'm already looking at?
You can and cheat, right? You're a man and nothing else.
Right.
This will be really important to understand this. You're either a man or a woman and nothing else. So when we get into the Roman civil law, which is the legal system, we already talked about how this was first, written down and codified by Justinian, whatever, 1500 years ago, 1300 years ago. It was continually updated and has been continuously updated to this day. The Knights Templar took hold of it and ran around with it for a while. It was ultimately systematized by the British crown liege lord nobility class in the city of London. So that's when it became what we know today. And that's where it still operates out of, right? At the Inns of Court in Westminster, City of London. So they own the legal system there. So all the other bar associations in the world are franchises of this crown temple legal system. Make
That's an
sense?
interesting way to put it. Franchise. Yeah.
Yeah. The
The
American
legal
and
franchise system.
right. The American Bar Association is a franchise of this legal system.
Right.
So in a sense, right, all we're beholden to the British Crown Temple Bar. They're the ones that make the rules for all of us when it comes to the legal system. One other quick little note is that the legal system was deliberately designed to be incredibly confusing and time consuming because it's an occult art. And by occult, we mean hidden. So how to operate within it is hidden from everybody who's not an attorney. And even most attorneys only know little portions of the legal system, whatever their expertise is in, for example. But it's just a massive body of information that no single person could even come close to understanding. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So also I mentioned at the top that words, especially in the legal system, have more than one meaning, sometimes dozens of meanings for words. So when they are spoken by a judge or an attorney, that there's a very good chance many times that you don't understand which definition they're using, which is why any of these lawful patriotic gurus out there who know what they're doing will tell you never speak in court. You get everything in writing and you respond in writing. You don't allow the judge to put any testimony in on your behalf, and you don't speak to me. You just say, Your Honor, I'd like some time to understand and research what you're asking me or what you're telling. So one of the many mistakes that people make is they stand there and talk to the judge, and he says a word that you think you understand the meaning of. You understand one definition, but he's using another definition. So quickly, maxim of law, he who creates controls. A maxim is just a thing that everybody accepts as truth. And that makes perfect sense. If you create something, you control it. And as I mentioned, British Crown controls what they created, the legal system. With me?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's their property.
Okay. That's a great choice of words. It is precisely their property.
Yeah.
So,
and there's no point complaining about how, like, if you decide to use their property and, be involved with their property, don't be so surprised when it works how they want it to work.
right. That's called a contract. We're not going to do that today. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, you're constantly contracting with the legal system in just about every facet of life.
Right.
Your driver's
Yeah.
license, your bank account, your credit cards. I mean, everything is a legal contract. So it's every app that you're signed up for, online or on your phone, you're in a contract with those people. So just a few examples of how this overlay works, right? Is I'm just going to give them in the sense of courtrooms and so forth. A single judge can declare it's illegal to film a proceeding in his or her courtroom. just like that. And so he says it's illegal to film in this public courthouse. But in reality, it's a public courthouse and a public proceeding. So it's perfectly lawful for the public to be in the courthouse watching or filming the proceeding. With me?
Oh, yeah.
But somehow we've allowed these judges to be the all supreme ruler, and whatever he says goes. And everybody, of course, in the courthouse goes with whatever the judge says. Another example would be it's illegal for someone to drive without a license, right? You can't drive without a license. But in reality, it's perfectly lawful for someone to drive that's competent and capable of driving. And obviously, a 5-year-old can't see out the windshield and press the gas and brakes and so forth. So not capable, right? But if someone knows how to drive and they're tall enough to sit in the driver's seat, technically speaking, there's no universal law preventing them from driving. Drinking alcohol, another example, right? And I don't know what it is in Australia, but in the USA, you got to be 21 to drink alcohol. Is that the same for you?
18.
I actually got grandfathered in, giving away my age to being 18 and being able to drink. But of course, it's lawful for, I think in Europe, there's some countries, there's no age limit at all.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if the parents feel the kid's responsible enough or can handle it, then they can drink. So again, no law preventing it. So a couple examples there, just to give you a sense of how this legal system overlaid onto what's lawful.
Right. And I think it's important to bring the distinction between these two words into really, central to your consciousness now. Legal, lawful. Like whether something's legal or illegal has to do whether it's for, in alignment with or against the legal system, which is a creation of particular men and women throughout history and now. That's lawful right. Has nothing to do with the legal system whatsoever.
Well, right? Yeah, I mean, that's not, so the legal system is redundant, right? When it matches the lawful system, right? So the legal system says you can't murder anybody, and the lawful system says you can't murder anybody, right?
Sure, maybe nothing to do with isn't the most accurate wording.
Yeah, it's what happens is they overlay it onto the lawful system.
Right. Yeah. So it even seems like it's the same thing. As you're a kid and you're growing up and, you get into this whole thing, into, being an adult and involving in commerce and work and stuff, you really think that the legal system is the law.
That's right. Right. It's just pounded into our heads from day one. It's on all the TV most popular television programs and movies, right? They're all often involve some legal proceedings.
Yeah. And they'll say things like, oh, that's against the law. But
right.
They're saying against the legal system.
Yep. The legal system is all policies, right? And they're redundant when the two match.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's key to understanding, right? If you harm somebody, right, you're going to be penalized in the legal system or the lawful system. Right? If you wreck some guy's car, for example, then you have to compensate that guy for wrecking his car. Mm-hmm. The fact that it goes through a legal proceeding doesn't really matter so much, right? You're going to have to compensate that person accordingly if you went to court over such an event. Right? It's unlawful for you to smash another person's car as well as being illegal. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the Bar Association. First thing to understand about this is it's a private club. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the state, county, or federal governments, nor public welfare. Right? It's a private entity. Now, it just so happens that the Bar Association has gotten all the states to use their training and their education to pass this bar exam in order to be able to be a practicing attorney.
Hmm.
Again, they're a private entity, completely private. So it's not even a corporation, right? It's a trust for all intents and purposes. So, before we had 100 years of no need for a bar association or a bar exam. We had regular, from 1776 to 1870, roughly 100 years, we had no such thing as a bar association. Yet we carried on with, thousands, maybe millions of lawsuits and cases that happened during that period of time. Yes.
Yep. So
You know,
1871 was like, is that when the bar came in?
I think that's the year. So
The
it's some
States?
1870s, somewhere in there. I
All
can't
right.
remember exactly,
Okay.
but maybe 1878. Can't remember precisely. But yeah, basically
Okay.
100 years is where we existed in the United States without any bar association.
Hmm.
We talked about the 13th Amendment, how that was to prevent titles of nobility, yada yada yada. So, it's also worth pointing out that the U.S. Constitution doesn't stipulate any need for a bar card or passing a bar exam or anything to plead a case. Back in those days, if your neighbor harmed you in some way, caused you loss or injury, you took them to court. If you couldn't settle the dispute outside of court, you just walked
Hmm.
in, and it was a very simple process. He said,
You'd make your
you know,
case.
yeah, Matt, borrowed my tractor and drove it into a lake and ruined it. Right? And you say,
Right.
well, that was because the brakes were bad or whatever, or the gears, and I say, it doesn't really matter. You wrecked my tractor, that cost me $100. I need to be compensated. So there was no need for attorneys, and the judge was simply a referee in these suits, and the jury of your peers, right? Your townsfolk, your neighbors, sat and listened to each side plead their case and made a decision. Very simple.
And if it was a more complicated case and you had a friend who was experienced in law, you might have them come and argue it, and they might be known as a lawyer. Is that right?
Counselor at law would be more
Counselor at
common.
law. Right.
So they were assisting, providing counsel. They weren't standing up there,
Right. They
making the
provide
arguments.
counsel. Right. 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 Gotcha.
Right. That's where the word counsel comes from in the legal
Hmm.
realm. So quickly, a lot of people don't know, and this isn't so important for you, but in the United States, knowing the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, they're all very short, simple. But it reads, in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, which was a lot of money back then. The right of trial by jury, not a jury trial, shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. So that little sentence right there completely nullifies appeals courts, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Can't be tried again. But we have, attorneys make zillions of dollars with appeals. So many people appeal. And it's not to suggest that sometimes that isn't valuable and worthwhile, but according to the Constitution, no such thing shall be done. And this, of course, has not been amended. It's important to point out that the common law was the English/American common law. It had nothing to do with any legal system. There's no such thing as the legal system when the Constitution was written.
Right. I imagine you'd be pretty annoyed if you took someone to court and, won. And then they said, well, I don't like it. And then they go up to another court and you win again. And they say, well, I don't like that. And they go up to another higher court and you win again. And they say, well, I don't like that. And go to
Right.
another higher court. I mean, when does this end?
People get locked into cases for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It just
Right.
drains their bank accounts. And the framers of the Constitution understood that.
Right.
So, how many matters do we have today over $20? I mean, make it $2,000. It doesn't, for inflation. But how many
Hmm.
matters actually get settled by, a trial by jury? It's very, very few today, right? A judge decides the vast
Hmm.
majority of cases today. So we're
Right.
not
It says you have the right of trial by jury.
right. We're not adhering to that either. And just the last point, the rules of common law are not the same thing as the rules of civil. Every time you hear the word civil, think Roman procedure, which were implemented in 1938, of course. Now, do attorneys know this? No, they don't. Most of them don't. They were not taught this. Not to suggest that attorneys are all bad or all wrong or anything. They just literally weren't taught this. I think I mentioned in one of the history talks that they were told that the common law is case law. Every attorney I've ever
Right.
talked to says exactly that. That's what they were taught. And case law is all it is the opinion of a judge in the past. Kind of call it settled case law. I went over this in the history bit a little bit. That is not the common law. This is what they were taught. So you can see how, this kind of indoctrination happens even to, the people that are the professionals in this field.
Mm-hmm.
With me?
Oh yeah, I might imagine that they so deeply into it at this point they might not want to know.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can go a lot of different directions, into science and medicine and a lot of different fields, and this gets very uncomfortable. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's worth pointing out, just so I don't run off any attorneys, that they're totally needed for all forms of corporate matters, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. I think I mentioned this earlier, but just want to say that the Bar Association has completely taken over our public courthouses. I talked about
Right.
an example of one guy in particular that I love to listen to, brings his cases in. Literally, he says you could fill these out with a crayon and a napkin. That's all you need. That's all that's required. I, John Q. Public, was wronged by wrongdoer Jane Q. Public. She damaged my property, and I want to be compensated. That's your whole suit. Take it in, and you should be able to get a case, right? You should be able to get a hearing based on that alone. But what happens is these clerks of court take your remedial, elementary filing, and they redo it all, and in terms of how the legal system wants it done.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's had to go back in numerous times and say, you just damaged my property. Who gave you the right to change my court filing, right? And the clerk has no idea. They just say, I was just trying to help you out and make it right, so it worked and everyone understood it. He has to basically educate these clerks of courts on what's happening. Right now, I'm filing a case for my courtroom because
So
I'm the
who is
king.
supposed to be, running the courts? Like just a few locally elected representatives?
That's right.
Right. And that's
They're
it.
just
But instead we have this like infestation of the bar association just sitting in there and being like, yep, almost like
that's right.
squatting in it and be like, yeah, we run this.
That's right. They
And
just took it
everyone
over.
is under a spell and just believes that this is normal or this is right.
That's right. It's completely been overwhelmed and taken over. Long, long, long ago, 150 years ago, it started. For almost the past 100 years, they almost all operate like this.
Right. So they were there before we were born, and now we even think that they're meant to be there.
Right.
Well, not for much
Classic
longer.
brainwashing. So, license to practice law. I love that. I just had to take those words and chop them up. So, a license, right, is a permission or authority to do something that would otherwise be unlawful or illegal. Right? That's what a license is. In other words, you can't do this thing without a license. Practice. What do you do when you practice? It's working on getting better at something, right? And of course, law, immutable, unchangeable, universal truths. A license to practice law. When you break down what each one of those words means, it loses a lot of its luster, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, who do these people think they are to be dishing out licenses?
And technically speaking, it isn't a license. I think in two states in the United States, and Hawaii is one of them, and there's one other where attorneys actually have licenses. But
Right.
if you were to go up to an attorney everywhere else and say, pull out your license to practice law, I want to see it, they have no such thing. They have a bar
Mm-hmm.
card, but it's not a license.
Mm-hmm.
They're effectively endorsed by the bar, not by the state.
Endorsed by the bar. Yikes.
That's right. Right. The bar exam. Right? You have to pass
Bar
that
exam.
in order to be a practicing attorney. The bar
Yeah,
exam's
they make
written
movies about it. Like
by the bar.
with Matt Damon, he passed the bar, and all the people are so happy, and it's just so great. He passed the bar. What a normal thing to do. He can be a
Precisely.
lawyer now.
Right. The reality of it is that you and I and everybody else knows when someone's done something wrong. We all know it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a
Right.
license. We don't need a card. We don't need to take an exam. We don't need to learn rules of civil procedure. We file our case, we walk into the courtroom, and we plead our case. Everybody understands it. All right. Corporations. Got it. I think I hit this a couple times in the past, but just want to reaffirm it quickly. You break that word down Latin, it's corpse orating, right? Talking dead. Corp is body, right? Corpus. So what that means is, if it's lost on anybody, is that they're giving life to something that has no life. That's what a
Mm-hmm.
corporation is. It's a fictional entity. It's not real. Alphabet Inc., Facebook Inc., McDonald's Incorporated. These are fictional entities. It's so hard for people to get their heads around,
Yeah, it took
rather.
me a while. Like, I was asking, like, so what makes this thing into something? Is it the fact that you write words on paper and then the paper symbolizes it or something? And I eventually just realized that there is nothing, right? There's literally nothing. There's nothing in reality that you can point to that is any corporation. There
Right?
is nothing. There is no specific existent or entity that is a corporation. That you can't
That's right.
touch it, smell it, sense it in any way. There is nothing.
Bingo. And that's hard for people to grasp. Because again, our thinking has been inverted completely, right? But that's
Yeah,
the
just because you
reality of
write some
things.
words on paper and say, "Oh yeah, there's this thing. It's called this, XYZ Ventures LLC." There's still literally nothing there. Doesn't matter how many words you write about it, and this big legal talk about how it's partnered with the state and works in this way under this law or this jurisdiction or whatever like that. There's literally nothing there.
Very good. You got it.
Took me a while.
He's Yeah, no, you can't harp on it enough. This is one of the main things you have to start to understand to get a hold of what we're talking about. Is that the legal system 100% only deals with fictional entities,
Right.
and the fictional means dead. Another way to look at it. But you are a living man. So how in the world can they get their dead entities to interact with you, the living man? We're about to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Just quickly, the corporations, the first one, I think the East India Company was what the forerunner, or it could have been the West India Company. Can't remember for sure, but it was, these are back around the early 1800s is when this new entity called a corporation was first devised. And it was very purposeful. And this is the reason people start corporations today, literally LLCs, limited liability corporation. Uh, Number one, they obfuscate ownership, so you can make a bunch of shell corporations and kind of hide. There's all kinds of services out there where you can pay a person a couple $100 a year, and he'll basically masquerade as the director of your corporation,
Mm-hmm.
and really hard for you to figure out that he's just basically an actor, and he's covering for another actor where there's another corporation, you know, above his corporation that also has an actor. And by the time you get through 10 corporations or whatever, you might find the real guy or the group of guys that's running this thing. So it's very much a way to obfuscate ownership. Another point is that they limit liability. So obviously, when you start up a corporation, you aren't personally liable for any mistakes, errors, injuries, harms caused in the course of running your corporation. So the only thing people could ever sue is the corporate assets, right? They can't sue you personally. And lastly, these really protect the ruling class more than anything. Trusts do an even better job of that. I'm not going to talk about those today, but it's protecting this ruling class. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So a couple prime examples now of the legal overlay. And this is, my temporary title for the book that I may finish one day called Titles of Slavery. We'll see
Oh,
how
you'll
this
finish it.
works. We'll see. So we'll see, get a taste of how this works. So the word legalese is bandied about, and people love to talk about, I don't understand that legalese, right? It's literally what's called a term of art. These legal words, terms of art, officially what they can be called. They're deliberately deceptive, right? They are, again, fictional entities. I already mentioned that. And all of this is good times legalese. So here's the number one example out of all of them. And that word is person. Stems from the Greek persona. And that was given to the actors. They used to hold plays, right, on a stage back in ancient Greece. And these actors would hold a mask over their faces or wear a mask and play the role of whatever part they were playing. And that's where the word person derives from. So it was persona. It was an acting. It was not the real thing, right? It was the acting bit. Interesting, just a quick note. Rudolf Steiner, one of my favorite guys, said the Roman age was the first time humans fully identified as a physical person. Little interesting side note. So it was a shift from the earlier times, which obviously I won't dive into, but this was the creation of the word citizen, which we'll get to next. So in the legal system, you can go look up the word person in Black's Law, 11th edition. I've got it sitting on my bookshelf. If you go to look up the person, it'll say see natural person or artificial person, if you can believe that. A natural person is what you think you are. You think, yeah, I'm a person. But 99% of the time in writing, in the legal system, they're always talking about this artificial person, which can be a corporation, a trust, a partnership, sole proprietorship, and on and on and on. All these fictional entities can be artificial persons. Go ahead.
We shouldn't really be referring to ourselves as people as persons, right? Like at the beginning, you said, "What are you? A man or a woman, and nothing else?" Yeah.
That's
if you're calling yourself a person, you're under some sort of spell, right?
Well, yes and no. So, I've seen some video of a guy trying to play this game, whatever, with a speeding ticket or whatever, and the guy saying, standing there in courtroom looking like an idiot, saying, "I'm not a person," and the judge said, "Well, you sure look like a person to me." And here's the game. Here's the game, right? The judge can change meanings and definitions anytime he wants. So he's saying, "Yeah, you look like a natural person to me," and the guy's saying, "I'm not this artificial person, straw man." And you're never going to get anywhere with the judge. He's never going to admit to any of that. So you're wasting your time with this argument. But this is just to show that this all capitals name straw man, right, that we've talked about, is the artificial person.
Right.
It's the Sestake trust, the implied trust that we have not been made aware of by the inventors of this game called legal system.
And just to clarify my question, because this is a more of a self-discovery question, which is always in the background of what we're talking about here. Like just in general, like when you're just talking to your friends or your family, partner or whatever, it seems like we shouldn't really be using this word person to describe us. If this is mask, which it is. I mean, I've heard this from other sources as well. Why would you refer to yourself as a mask? That seems absurd.
Yeah, but it's just so, in colloquial conversation, it's just so heavily used now. It would sound ridiculous almost to not say it. But right
I
in
try
the
to avoid it
course,
these days, though.
yeah, as you catch on to this, I can see what you're saying. But yeah, everybody would think you're a weirdo who's never heard of this before. Of
Oh
course
yeah,
you're a
it's not like I
person.
have some argument or anything like that, but I was about to say, just personally, just on my own, you know, just avoid saying it to refer to myself.
Yeah, well, this goes even way deeper than all of that. But you're right. You are not, this gets more into our self discovery talk, like you said. You're not a person for sure. So another classic word is citizen, right? Again, first defined in Roman times. And what you'll hear if you go listen to any of these, lawful gurus, they talk about the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. We talked about that in the history podcast previously, so I won't delve into that. But this was slowly unleashed upon all Americans over the course of 50, 60 years until it was the only choice prior to this 14th Amendment, which gave privileges and benefits to the freed slaves. Uh, that was the purpose of it. Is actually you now, when you agree and say, I am a U.S. citizen, you have now sacrificed your natural rights and you now come under the purview of the government, which created the U.S. citizen, the legal system.
Hmm.
So,
Right. So it's like, I guess citizen used to mean, you just think like, okay, it means you're an inhabitant of a city, right? But I suppose how we're supposed to refer to ourselves is like you got like Leonardo da Vinci, right? You don't talk about the citizen. I'm a citizen. You're like, it's just like I'm this man or woman from this city, right? You can refer to yourself like that.
yeah, you can.
It's like an honorable way to refer to yourself. Yeah.
It's tricky, and again, using words, spoken words, you're going to get yourself into trouble time and time again. Just keep
Hmm.
coming back to I'm a man, and here's the next one: resident. Are you a resident of blah 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 blah? Everybody's well, yes, I'm a resident of this city and state and country. Well, we go back to the Latin. Go ahead.
So these terms you're giving, these have at some point throughout history been like legally defined, right, and given legal meaning, and they're like there for us to like sign up to identify as these legal definitions, right?
That's right. You check the box all the time. You're a resident of this state, you're a
Right.
citizen of this country, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So res Latin means thing.
Hmm.
And then of course we have ident, which is to identify, identification, identity. So resident is identification of the thing. So ask yourself, are men and women things according to the legal system?
So you're
I don't
calling
think.
yourself a thing.
Yep. You're identifying as the thing. When the thing is the trust, right?
Oh.
The cestake trust. You're identifying as that thing. More specifically, you're identifying as the trustee for that thing
Hmm.
unwittingly. So another great one is driver. One thing you'll note in statutes, codes, acts written by legislatures in the legal system, they never apply to men and women. They apply to citizens, persons,
Hmm. Hmm.
residents,
Hmm.
drivers.
Sure.
There's a few other, but they never say that this applies to men and women or the people. It's persons. That's why. Why do we have a plural for the word person when we have the word people, which means multiple persons? Right? Why do we need persons as well?
Hmm.
Ever think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I have thought about that, and it just brought me to the. Just I remember wondering. I was like, well, what's people then? I wonder what people is, but I haven't gone further with it, understanding that.
It's another legal term of art so that they can
Right.
stick to their definitions. So if you're a driver of a motor vehicle, right, you're now under the auspices of the legal system.
Hmm.
If you just say, I was traveling with my property, that doesn't work. You're not suddenly you're not under the legal system. If you
Right.
say you're a driver, though, then all of a sudden you're under it.
So they say to you, you were driving this vehicle? You're like, well, yes. Like, oh, okay. So you were part of the commercial legal system, right? Performing this task defined as what a driver does. And you were in this vehicle, which is like has all this, contractual use terms with the state, etc. And you're like, yep,
catching hold of it.
Yep, that's me.
I mean, they never say any of those words, but that's the implication behind all of it, right?
Right. It's between the lines, yeah.
Right between the lines. Taxpayer is another one. Are you a taxpayer, Matt?
No, I'm not a taxpayer. Are you a taxpayer?
I'm just a
what
man.
About the
just a simple man.
What about the person listening? You a taxpayer?
Right. 99% of the people, including me, 3 or 4 years ago, and all the time prior to that, would agree I'm a taxpayer. I've just sacrificed my status as a man when I say I'm a taxpayer.
Wow, what a great thing to be in this life.
It's a long, winding road to get into this one. We're not going to talk about taxes at all here, but there are ways to get around it, but it does require significant education for sure, and some chutzpah, to say the least.
And a whole lot of self-esteem and honor.
Yeah, a whole lot of both, a whole lot of all of that.
Yeah.
Mr. is another great word. It comes from Latin miser. Official definition, you'll get poor, miserable, wretched, unfortunate. But a minor in Roman times meant that you were a bonded debt slave. Right?
I was filling in a form the other day. I had to fill in this form, part of the legal system, and it was like title. And I could write anything there. And, normally I write Mr. And I didn't even know exactly what Mr. meant, but I was like, you know what? It's probably something bad. So I was like, Sir. Well, I was Sir Matthew. Like, why not? That's my title, mate.
That's a title of nobility right there. While all
there
these other
go.
ones are titles of slavery.
Right.
And here's just a little, just to give people one more sense of it. Like, in the legal system, right? If you get involved in a case, right, you'll be one of these things, these fictional legalese, terms of art things: a litigant, an affiant, a petitioner, a defendant, an applicant, a respondent, a plaintiff. You follow along?
Oh, yeah.
All fictional. None of them are men or women. They're legal terms that suck you into the legal system when you agree that you are that thing.
Yeah, because it's a specific concept with a specific definition and a list of attributes that go with it. And you're like, yeah, I'm that.
There you have
Someone else defined it for you, and you just accept it.
That's all there is to it. The power of these words, I am, is mind-boggling. We get way deep into self-discovery talk. We're not going to do today, but I am a driver. I am a citizen, a person, a taxpayer. You say you are it, then you've just sacrificed your position as a man or a woman, and you're now that legal entity that they have, that they've written rules about how it must behave.
Yeah, when we do when we're more self-discovery oriented stuff and talk about like the I am, and yeah, that's gonna go deep for sure.
Very deep. But this is a good starting point for people, which is why we're doing this early on. So one of my favorite guys is notorious for saying, when the judge calls him up, Mr. Smith to the stand, please, or the defendant, Mr. Smith, to the stand, he'll say, "Thank you, Judge, for offering me these wonderful titles, but today I'm just not interested in accepting any. But thank you very much." So he won't accept. You don't accept your defendant? No. You don't accept you're a citizen? No. I don't accept any. And he just keeps thanking the judge for offering him the titles, but he's going to decline them today.
Thank you, but I'll decline. It's like being offered a piece of cake. Like,
right. What it comes down to is these bar attorneys and judges are speaking an entirely different language. It's legalese. It's no different than you trying to talk with someone that speaks Japanese, but you don't speak Japanese. You don't understand what they're saying. This is why the advice: don't don't get into oral discussions. Do everything in writing. Let's see here. Lawmaker. I wanted to hit on that because I just hear it all the time when they talk about senators and
Yeah.
congressmen. They think, well, our lawmakers did this, our lawmakers did that, right? A
Yeah.
legislature, right? Legislature.
A
Legis
bunch of
is from
nonsense.
liege, right? Liege, allegiance, liege lord, legal, right? It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah. I didn't notice that one. Yeah. Legis. Legis.
right?
That's I didn't know that one.
Slipped a new one in there. Got you a few new things here today.
Regis the king. Legis the liege. Okay.
There you go. Nice connection. Right. So all these governments and corporations, they make corporate policies and rules. That's what the senators and the Congress and the way that our government was set up was they were supposed to make rules for how the employees of the corporation, the federal government, how they behave. And we didn't we did not elect representatives to go make rules that stymied our behavior. Why would we do that?
Right.
That's insane, right? Why would I'm going to
Yeah.
hope that you go to Washington D.C. and make rules that don't impinge or infringe upon my rights and abilities?
That's
Right?
so absurd.
Right?
I want
Dumbest
you to
thing you've
go
ever
out
heard.
there and trample on my rights. Go on. Yeah, I'm so glad I elected Ted Cruz to go to Washington and stuff up my rights.
Exactly. This is
Let's
exactly. It
let's all
doesn't.
celebrate.
None of it makes a lick of sense. So moving along here. So bringing the dead or the legal entity to life, right? So an attorney is required to represent the fictional entity, to represent. So it has to represent the fictional entity as a real entity. That's what the attorney is
Mm-hmm.
for.
Just change the pronunciation. Represent. If we
Right.
just said it, represent, well, you'd see it straight away.
Exactly. It's all hidden in plain sight. What do attorneys file? They file complaints. Think about that word complaining, whining. You're just whining and complaining.
Just some peasant, just some wretched, miserable peasant complaining.
Right. An attorney cannot file a claim. A claim is made by a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I claim Matt damaged my property. But the attorney can't claim that because it isn't his property and you didn't damage anything of his. So he can't make that claim. So he's got to make a complaint, which is inferior to a claim.
Mm.
Anytime a complaint is running, if somebody files a claim in relation to that complaint, they have to stop the proceedings of the complaint and get straight to the claim first. It always supersedes the complaint.
Okay.
What else do judges and attorneys do? They summons you to court, do they not? You receive a
Mm-hmm.
summons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, think about that word summons and where else you've heard that word, right? People who perform seances and other strange behaviors, right? They summons the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that the dead in the legal system is being summoned to court.
I can
And
imagine
how do
someone saying, "Oh, that's just silly."
maybe 50 times in this podcast for all I know, but eventually the evidence starts to mount to the point where you're like,
Exactly.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
right? What do attorneys file all the time in cases? They file motions. That's the only way to move a dead entity and put it in motion. It's the only way to move it along. So they file all these different motions to put these fictional entities into motion.
Right. Like you would never, without this legal system, you would never say to the referee of the court, "Oh, file a motion." Like people would be like, "You file a what?" Like, what are you
Right.
talking about, dork? Get out of here.
But
That's
I mean,
nonsense.
the knee jerk behavior of so many defense attorneys is to file just right off the bat. They just file a motion to dismiss right off the bat. That slows everything down until the judge has a chance
God.
to look at it. They just do it on the off chance that the judge will accept it.
Hmm.
I mean, you'd be negligent probably as an attorney to not file motions to dismiss all the time on behalf of your clients. And what else do judges or attorneys do? They plead, right? They file pleadings. So where do you hear the word pleading connected to? Begging and pleading. They're saying,
When you're
please,
trying to get your spouse or
yeah,
boyfriend or
right,
girlfriend to just treat you better.
right. You're pleading, you're begging, you're saying, please, 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 decide this in my favor. That's what a pleading is. You're pleading. So it all goes to the judge. So the judge, this one man or woman, gets to decide the whole basis of the case based on your pleading. So
Yeah.
anyways, right? Complaints, pleadings, summons, motions. This is the legal system. You can see how it's set up. But the judge is totally in charge of everything. And the attorneys are second in line, right? They get to talk and
Uh-huh.
represent things. And the
Right.
actual people involved, the men and women involved in the case, are third in line. They hardly get to say anything. They hardly get to do anything. Right?
And they're only there as their corporation, right?
Well, if it's a lawful scenario too, where you really did
Mm-hmm.
cause harm or loss to somebody, then it would be legitimate. Of course, you do have to
Mm-hmm.
stand trial for those behaviors. But yeah, once again though, you're stuck with the attorney doing all the talking for you. All right, so we got a few more minutes here. Appearing in court. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. 99.99% of the time, you show up as a general appearance. Think about that word appearance, right? The
Mm-hmm.
dead appearing in the real world. If anybody were
Yeah.
even going to come close to attempting to do something, if they knew a little bit about this, the only time they would ever step up in court, they would begin by notifying the court they're making a special appearance. And that means, by
Mm-hmm.
definition, that they're going to challenge jurisdiction. Excuse me. So they're going to argue that the state or the police officer or whatever, it doesn't have jurisdiction over you. That's what people do. So just
Okay.
quickly running over that. A lot of times when you want to represent yourself, I don't know, which is impossible. How do you represent yourself? You would just
Yeah.
present yourself, wouldn't
Imagine
you?
saying that. I'm representing myself.
Right? But they
Just
in the
say
legal
it thinking
system,
you're smart. Like,
they call this pro se. You don't hire an attorney. You want to argue for yourself. So they'll say, "Oh, you want to be pro se," and if you say you're pro se, then that means you're representing the fictional straw man trust.
mm-hmm.
The correct words to use is to say, "I am especially appearing here sui juris." That means of one's own right. That is a common law appearance, which does not work in the legal system.
It seems strange to
So
say that you're appearing at all. You just say I'm here, right?
that's what they call it when the people involved in the case show up. They call it an
Right.
appearance.
So definitely part of the overlay, though, right? These appearances, like if you're appearing, like
Right.
you're not appearing, you're just arriving or coming.
Well, the dead was summoned, so the dead appears.
Yeah.
So let's see the will of the judge. They can. This is. I just wanted to hit this real quick. Is that just a reminder of my disclaimers that the judge on their will and whim can just hold you in contempt just because he or she says so. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
how right you are, what truth you're telling. Doesn't matter. You can just say, contempt. If you keep going down this path, I'm going to hold you in contempt. I'll throw you in jail for 24 hours, 48 hours. In more extreme cases, they can order a psych evaluation and
Mm-hmm.
literally have you committed.
Right. I mean, this in the '60s, they would have taken electrocuted you and chopped some of your brain out.
It could get that bad. And I've heard of stories of this happening to people who tried to, didn't know enough, didn't understand the process, and got themselves into these situations. It's really ugly. So, and they knew a lot more than I'm sharing today. Still got into trouble. So you got to know all this stuff in advance. That's for sure. Quickly, the king. So who holds court? If you think about the word court, right? This was the
Mm-hmm.
king or queen. The king or queen would hold court, right? The king or queen would say to their subjects, "I would like to hold court in an hour, you know, on the balcony or whatever, right? Wherever they were." And
Mm-hmm.
the subjects would run around and gather everybody up. And the king or queen, right, the words that they would say, they never say, "Go do this, go do that" to people. They would say, "It is my wish that the peasants be charged an additional 5% on their, crops, right? Or it is my wish, right? And the subjects, all listening, would then go about making their wishes come true.
Mm-hmm.
Making a little bit of sense? That's what a court was.
So the court is the place where the king or queen says what they wish, and people listen, and then, upon conclusion, go and carry out the bidding.
That's right.
Okay.
So if you were clever enough and you researched this and knew what you were doing and you ever had a situation arise, you could file a common law claim and then hold the court in your name. So it would be the Cook Court. It wouldn't be, the New York District Court or the Dade County
Mm-hmm.
Municipal Court. It would be
Mm-hmm.
literally the Cook Court. It's your court. And you're
Mm-hmm.
part of the public. It's your courtroom. And I don't have time
Oh, it's
today, but
somewhere for me to hold court, right? It's a
yeah,
courthouse. It's where we can hold court.
that's right. As a member of the public, you got it.
Right.
Nice connection. It's exactly right. So closing down here, got a couple more points to make. So the world we live in, I just imagine a world where the smartest, toughest people rose to the top of the heap. Right? If we were just to wipe out all law and authority and everybody, police and all the agencies, just start from scratch, wouldn't you imagine that eventually the smartest, toughest guys would rise to the top and take control?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happened. It's the world we live in today.
Right. It's already happened
And
before we were born, right? And
yep.
continues to happen.
And it would happen again if we were to start from scratch tomorrow.
Right.
You can imagine, the toughest guys in your neighborhood would all of a sudden, they'd be like, hey, if you want to be protected, we'll protect you, but it's going to cost you. Right.
Right.
That kind of a thing. So little by
Right. The whole
little,
thing has always felt like a racket.
right. Which it
Mm-hmm.
is in a lot of ways. And the people who figured out this, I mean, let's face it, the legal system is ingenious. I mean, it is beyond
yeah.
genius. It is
You got to
so
hand it to them.
ingenious. Absolutely have to hand it to them. It is brilliant. And of course, why would they teach us, right? If we are their servants and serfs, why would they teach us how to navigate around their system and understand exactly what it's doing? They wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to teach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So here, closing out last couple points. Like many things in this world, the legal system is really a test. It's a test to find out if you know who you really are. And in reality, in many senses, it's a spiritual IQ test.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to delve
SQ.
into that today. It's an SQ test. There you go. It's exactly what it is. So I've heard many guys talk about how judges just absolutely clamor and rejoice and just feel so blessed to be in the presence of a real man or woman in their courtroom because they haven't seen one in decades. There's a couple dozen people that I know of that know how to do that. And when you are in honor, when you know who you are, when you're speaking from the heart, the judge will move aside and allow you to proceed with your court as the king.
Mm-hmm.
They may test you, they may push you and pressure you, but once you prove you can pass the test and you understand who you are, they will move aside and become the referee for you. And that's how you access a common law court. It's been done before, it can be done again in recent times. So just kind of closing out here. Why are we discussing this today? For starters, it's understanding and awareness of who you are. That's the first step. And it goes far beyond being a man or woman. But for now, we're sticking right there. The second piece of this is to cessate, limit the fear that's being wielded against us. That's what, everybody's afraid of, the legal system. So you can start to lessen some fears if you get a hold of this. But ultimately, it's really, if you think about it carefully, it's all about taking back your power. You have all the power. Every single listener here today has the power, not the legal system. You have the power. And as long as you didn't harm somebody else, cause them some harm or loss, then there's no reason for you to be involved in a case where there's no victim. Victimless crimes, right? State crimes, government crimes. There's no victim, there's no crime. So by understanding all of this, what you've really done is you've taken back, starting to take back your power, which we've been giving away for millennia. With me?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to mention the course in the context of this discussion today?
Yeah, well, we've got a course. I think it's nearing readiness. Will it be
Most likely
available?
when people watch this, it'll be ready. Just if you're watching it, assume it's ready.
All right, then it will be ready. It's exactly what this course is all about. It's about taking back your power, how you do it. Obviously, understanding is a big thing, and that's what we're doing in our podcast. But the course is really more about some changes in how we live and perceive the world, and some changes in where our awareness goes is what the key is to taking back your power. And it's a long course, many videos involved, and by the end of it, people will begin to see how they've been giving away their power all their lives. And not to make people feel bad about it, but it is what we've all been indoctrinated and brainwashed into for many millennia. And I could say part of that is purposeful, or it was purposeful, due to the state of consciousness of humanity is needed. But we're coming out of that now. Many people are coming out of that now. And this control matrix legal overlay will not be necessary for those that are ready, willing, courageous enough to step outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my outline. Anything you'd like to add, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I could say, yeah, I would imagine that a lot of people that come to this particular podcast have been interested, in this whole legal system thing. They're like, I've started to realize that the legal system is some fake, phony thing that they're using to control us. And I think I'm aware that, when you start to get into that zone, you're like angry about it. And then like you're trying to figure out like these techniques to combat it, like trying to get your real birth certificate, or like trying to find out the words to say to the judge or something like that. And, all those are like gimmicks and techniques, and they're like what you might call outer game. But what we've really discovered is the real key to getting what you want here is your inner game. It's really knowing who you are and taking your inner power back, right? And feeling, we asked the question at the beginning, like, who are you, a man or a woman, and nothing else. But that, you can kind of like know that intellectually, but to really feel that and to be in alignment with that and to live like that automatically without techniques and going into a court and waving your birth certificate at the judge, there's kind of like a journey to self-discovery that you want to be involved with. And this course that we've assembled, Take Your Power Back, is, well, just ask us. It's our opinion that this is kind of like the ultimate technology in the world to restore you to your full power as a man or a woman. So whether you're watching this on social media, visit our website, themindblowenzone.com. And if you're already there, just take a look around the site. You're going to find information about Take Your Power Back. It's going to totally transform your life and make things so much better for you in every way you can possibly imagine. Definitely enjoy it.
Righto.
Anything else you'd like to say, Brett?
No, that was all really well said. Again, this was about some understanding and awareness, and just the very idea that you could take your power back, having lived a life fully believing that other people have the power, is a mind-blowing revelation in and of itself. What people don't realize is that the people that apparently have power have it because we as a collective species are giving it away to them because we believe so many lies. And
Hmm.
once you start to see through those lies and deceptions, you're on your way to taking your power back.
Oh, yeah.
All
That
right,
sounds great. Loving it.
perfect. Well, we ran a little over, but I think it was worth it. We got through the
Totally
whole
worth it.
uh, whole podcast. So appreciate everybody listening today. Thanks for moderating, Matt, and all your great questions. And we'll see you next week for our next podcast.
All right. Thank you, Brad. And thank you, buddy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great time. Bye bye.